Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel here for a little commentary thing here. I just want to talk about a little bit. Some exciting things happened past couple of days. Boy, let me tell you, man, yeah, one tweet up on Twitter, dude. Fucking, I got everybody after me. Yeah, Thursday, one of the parlors, students. It's involved with all the march and everything. She tweeted out that a warning to everybody calling them kids. That she was going to be 18 soon, and one of the other ones is already 18. So we all better be afraid. We all better be afraid. And I just had to comment to her about something on it because, as you guys know, Florida, passed legislation to raise the legal age to purchase firearms to 21 in the state of Florida. I don't necessarily agree with that, at least not for the... I don't know. I'd have to look at the legislation to determine the reasoning why. If it's just as a direct result of the shooting, I can't, agree with it solely on that premise at all. But the argument that a lot of these Parkland students have been making is that, an 18-year-old isn't mature enough to own a firearm. They're not mature enough to purchase and own firearms. Well, for me, that kind of, raises some little flags right there, because I'd like to think that if, a person is mature enough to own a firearm, or if they're mature enough to vote, then they should be mature enough to own a firearm. It only makes sense to me. I honestly would hope for more maturity involved in behind a person's thought processes for voting than in owning a firearm, because I'm not saying neither one's more important than the other, but I would like to say there needs to be a level of maturity involved behind having behind your vote. So I questioned her on this. I kind of called her on it, and I kind of said, if you're saying that you're not mature enough to own a firearm, then how are you saying you're going to sit there and say that you're mature enough to vote? And oh man, I got jumped on. Christopher Titus even chimed in, which I thought was kind of hilarious. For any of you guys out there who don't know who Christopher Titus is, he's a comedian. He used to have some shows on Comedy Central back in the day. But he tried chiming in on me, and he actually even said that, tried telling me that, if they're old enough to drive, they're old enough to vote. And the voting age should be 16. And I was like, really? I was like, and anybody out there who knows Christopher Titus, I asked him directly. I was like, now Christopher, taking into consideration, Christopher Titus, doesn't know the difference between open carry and concealed carry with firearms. And he's going to talk about, firearm safety and gun control and stuff. But that's besides the point. I asked him directly, do you seriously think that you should have had the right to vote when you were 16? I was like, would you trust 16-year-old Christopher Titus with the vote? I asked him that, and he had no response whatsoever. So it was kind of cool. I got to shut down my first, quasi-celebrity on Twitter. But yeah, after that though, it just all blew up. He was all that directed a lot of attention my way, and of course, all the people was like, how dare you attack her? She was a survivor of the shooting, which, don't get me wrong, all right? I feel bad for what happened to those kids down there. But, when you go from they've gone from being survivors to political activists now. Especially a select few of them have. And once you throw your hat in that arena, you can't expect to be treated. They should not be being treated with kid gloves. These kids need their eyes opened up. And yeah, I'm still calling them kids. My son's 20 years old, and I still call him kid. Because they're seriously not. They're not informed. And that David Hogg kid with his new armband thing. I'm like looking. I see him. The pictures he put out of himself with that new armband thing of his, and I'm immediately flashed to thinking of the Hitler Youth photos I've seen. I can't believe he thought that was a good idea. But yeah, I had, a whole bunch of people just, slinging all sorts of BS at me and, and stuff like that, trying to, coming at me with flawed arguments. It had to have been at least 30 people. My Twitter was blowing up. I had never seen something like that before in my life on Twitter. I think I ran across maybe three total people that came to realize the point I was trying to make after talking with them, and people that I could agree with. So we're looking at what, small percentage of the people who were actually out there looking to have a conversation about this stuff. And I'm more than willing to have a conversation about it. If the reasoning behind raising the age to 21 in Florida was because, as one person did state, and this is the only reasonable reason I could think of, that I heard to raise it, is the fact that when you turn 18, you haven't been an adult long enough to create a background, which I don't think is necessarily true, because I'm not positive. Again, I know shit, but I don't know everything. I'd have to check and see if the background checks go into juvenile records or not. I'm not positive, but honestly, it wouldn't have mattered in Parkland, because from all accounts and purposes, that shooter, he didn't even have a juvenile record. So I'm getting my car washed here, folks. I'm going out driving again tonight. So in order to develop a background on somebody and all that, they need to be an adult for a while, and raising it to 21. That sounds like a reasonable reason for me for the age to be raised to 21. Nobody else came up with anything like that though. So I was kind of frustrated with that. The thing that annoyed me the most though were the people who were just being so disingenuous with not only some of the things that they were saying, but some of the things that they were trying to get across, and their interpretation of the Second Amendment. The words, the rights of the people, all right, those are key words. I understand they're the well-regulated militia argument. I understand that, but it says of the people in there, so that's not just for the well-regulated militia. That's for normal people like me and you, normal civilians to own weapons. So it's really frustrating, especially on Twitter, when I've got like 30 people coming at me arguing, and point out things, and people who aren't even in this country, which floors me, because I don't go around. I don't understand. That's another thing I don't get. So many people in other countries commenting on what goes on in this country. I mean, I don't ever hear of or know anybody who actively gets on social media and attacks Australia for their gun buyback. I mean, sure, that gets brought up a lot in conversations about the Second Amendment here, is Australia's gun buyback, but it's brought up in the context of that. Nobody ever attacks Australia because of it. Nobody attacks Canada because of their restrictive gun laws, or attacks the UK and everything. It's always in, people point those countries out and, point out those countries and how they've handled, how they handle firearms. None of those countries have a Second Amendment right. None of those countries in their constitutions or whatever have a amendment or anything like that guaranteeing that the government will not infringe on their right to bear arms. So it's kind of annoying when you've got all these people going around from other countries that don't know our laws, don't know our heritage, don't know the way we the reason why the Second Amendment is in there. And I'm going to get into what the reasons that I feel reasons why they made sure that the founders included the Second Amendment in our Bill of Rights in another video. I got a lot more research I need to do on it. But there you go. Thank you. Folks, if you go through a car wash, real little side note here. Folks, if you go through a car wash and they got people out there drying your car off with towels and it's 36 degrees outside, tip them. Tip those poor kids. They deserve it. But yeah, none of these other countries, have a guaranteed right. None of them had to fight for their independence. The way we did. None of them fought and won their independence. So it's I appreciate y'all's input. I really do. Hannah, who lives in the UK and Germany, hi. If you're watching this, I appreciate your input and everything like that, but you honestly, you have no basis to speak from, because you don't understand the heritage, of this country. You don't understand where people who are for owning fire weapons, firearms, are, where they're coming from. You have no way of understanding it. So if you have no way of understanding it, then you've got no real business getting involved in the conversation. As far as I'm concerned, feel free, but you're losing points with me right off the bat if you've never lived here, or if you haven't been born here and understand why we have a Second Amendment right. Because it's not just so we can go out hunting, or as some people were freaking joking later on, we can arm up for the zombie apocalypse, whatever schmucks. But it's It's a complicated issue. I'm not going to lie. I did just see that the DOJ wrote up regulations banning bump stocks. Good job. I'm happy about that. Believe it or not, I am happy about that. I'm glad they've banned bump stocks. Are there controls that could be added? Possibly, yeah. I'm willing to listen to genuine and sensible ideas. As are most people who own firearms. What I would like to see, though, is for the systems we currently have in place to be utilized. And no matter how you cut it, it wasn't the NRA's fault. Parkland was not the NRA's fault. It was not NRA members' fault. It was not Dana Loesch's fault. It was not Mark Rubio's fault. It was the shooter's fault. The shooter, the guy who pulled the trigger, he's the one responsible. Now, that responsibility is also shared, though, by the ineptitude of that county sheriff's department. And that politician with a badge that they have down there is not acting like a law enforcement officer. He is acting like a politician trying to save his job. And anybody who is not standing up and pointing at him and saying, you had 45 chances to do something about that kid, that shooter, and you did nothing. Parents, family members calling in, neighbors, multiple visits out to the house for domestic calls. And that sheriff's department did nothing. Why? Because they were trying to lower the number of student arrests at school, so that school wouldn't, so they wouldn't have as high a crime rate at the school. That is, it's illegal. I mean, there's no other way to cut. There's no other way to cut it. I mean, that's illegal. That's against the law. You're not ignoring charges brought against somebody and not prosecute them. That's illegal. David Hogg actually tweeted out earlier today, and I quote his tweet with a response, where he said, wouldn't it be great if in school shootings they launched massive investigations like they do with plane crashes to figure out what happened, what went wrong, and took measures to make sure that didn't happen again. Yeah, it'd be great, because then we'd be able to see exactly how many times that sheriff's department failed those kids. I'm not taking any responsibility away from that shooter, the kid that pulled that trigger. But that sheriff's department is culpable for what happened there. And I'm not talking about the deputies that didn't go in. That's an entirely different issue. I'm talking about all the chances they had to make sure that shooting didn't start to begin with. But anyway, this is my first video here after my relaunch here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I said I wouldn't do the vertical again, but I gotta find a different way to mount my phone in my car when I'm driving, so I can talk to you guys. In order for me to flip it on its side there. Let me know what you guys think, though, in the comments below. Like I said, follow me on my other Twitter, Superpatriot 316. Follow me on that Twitter there, because that's where most of the discussions that I'll be talking about on this channel now are going to be at. so you can join in and see some of the crazy that goes on with some folks over there. But anyways, I appreciate you guys all watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you haven't done so, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you liked the video, please do so. Until next time, though, you guys all take care. Bye.